Have you ever had to choose between paying rent and ordering takeout? Well, this is actually a pretty strong economic concept in action. Today, I'm going to talk to you about budget constraint, what it is, how it works, and how to apply it to our everyday lives. We'll focus on two essentials that everybody understands, housing and food. Whether you're budgeting for the month or just want to make smarter choices, understanding this one concept will help a lot. So, what is budget constraint exactly? A budget constraint shows everything you can afford with a limited income and two goods to choose from. Think of it like a shopping boundary. You can afford to buy different combinations of housing and food, but only up to a limit, your total monthly income. For this example, let's assume your total monthly income is $2,000 per month, and you're deciding how much to spend on rent for housing and groceries and takeout for food. Let's plug in some numbers to see how this plays out. Let's say food costs $10 per meal. Let's use that as average. And housing can vary, so we'll treat it as flexible. Now, a budget constraint can be written like this. Housing, which is how much you pay for rent, plus 10, which is how much you pay for each meal, times the number of meals you buy, has to always be less than or equal to $2,000 per month, which is your total income. So if you rent a place for $1,000, you have $1,000 left for food, which at $10 allows you to buy 100 meals per month. Now if your rent was $800, you can buy 120 meals per month. Now if your rent goes up to $1,200, you could buy 80 meals per month. So the higher the rent, the fewer the meals you can afford. That is the trade-off. Let's take that trade-off and visualize it in a graph. This is where it gets visual. Picture a graph where the y-axis is how much you pay for rent or housing, and the x-axis is how many meals you can afford to buy. The budget line is a straight line that shows every combination of housing and food that spends a total of $2,000, your total income. So if you spend all your money on food, that is $2,000 divided by 10, you get 200 meals per month and zero left for rent. Now, if you were to spend all your money on rent, you would pay $2,000 on rent and will leave you $0 for food, so 0 meals per month. That line that connects the 2 points, it's your budget limit. Everything below it is affordable, and everything above, well, you can't afford it. Now, let's talk about what this line really tells us and how to interpret it. The slope of the budget line tells you the opportunity cost. Let's say you move from a $1,000 apartment to a $1,200 one. That's a $200 difference, so you can now afford 20 meals less than before. You're giving up 20 meals for a nicer place to live. That's opportunity cost, what you give up to get something else. And this slope is always the same unless prices change. So as long as the meals are $10, each $10 you spend on food is $10 less you're gonna be able to spend on rent. Now, what happens when your income changes or prices change? Let's say you get a raise. Now your income goes up to $2,500. You can now afford more rent and more food. Your budget line shifts outward, but you're not sacrificing anymore. You just have more flexibility. But if food prices go up from 10 to 12 per meal, you can now afford less food with the same income. That means the budget line gets steeper. The trade-offs become tougher. Income changes shift the whole line, and price changes tilt it. Now let's talk about something more relatable, like coupons, vouchers, and discounts. Suppose you get a voucher for 2 free meals. That means your first 2 meals will cost you nothing. So your budget line will start flat and then slope normally after that. This creates what we call a kink in the graph. Or let's say there's a 20% discount on food. So a $10 meal will cost you $8. This rotates the line outward because food is effectively cheaper. On the flip side, Sales taxes or price increases shift or rotate the line inward because you can now afford less. So, how do we apply this to everyday decisions? These budget trade-offs happen all the time. Have you ever had to decide between living alone or getting a roommate, or between meal prepping and eating out? These are budget decisions. If you cut your rent, you free up money for food, savings, or entertainment. If you spend more on housing, something else will have to give. Understanding budget constraints helps you make smarter, more intentional choices without guesswork. Let's wrap it all up with the key concept and key takeaways. To sum it all up, a budget constraint is the limit of what you can afford. A budget line shows you the trade-offs between two goods. The slope of this budget line tells you your opportunity costs. Any change on income or prices shift or rotate the line. And yes, discounts, vouchers, and real-world choices that we make affect our options too. This simple graph tells the story of how we spend, save, and sacrifice. And now you know how to read it. I hope you have had a good time and have learned a lot.